Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of USC Libraries and USC, welcome to Doheny Memorial Library. In a few moments, we'll have a chance to learn about the Immaculate Heart Community, whose story is so richly interwoven with the story of Southern California. From the group's 19th century origins in Spain, to a school at the historic St. Viviana's Cathedral in downtown Los Angeles and Immaculate Heart College, where pop artist and social justice activist Coretta Kent taught for many years, to the founding of the Immaculate Heart Community in 1970, and the organization's work in Southern California today. Important threads in this story are the community's advocacy for women's education and equality, and a host of other social issues, including housing, environmental justice, and anti-racism. Today we have a tremendous showing of the Immaculate Heart Community members in Doheny Library. The community members have been terrific partners with us in planning this event and exhibition, and we are especially grateful to them for entrusting the community's archives to the USC Libraries. The community members who are here with us today include President and Principal Executive Officer Sherry Purcell, Chair and Board Member Ray Mattis, Vice President Christine Moreau, Director of Mission Advancement Pam Pope, and Nan Cano, who played an integral role in preparing the archive for transfer to USC, and Lenore Dowling, who taught film at Immaculate Heart College and was part of the community from its founding. To all the Immaculate Heart I'll have another chance for applause. To all the Immaculate Heart Community members in attendance today, thank you for your partnership in this event and in the Women of Integrity exhibition, and in our shared work for preserving the story of the community's many contributions to Southern California. I also want to thank the Center for Religion and Civic Culture at USC Dornsife College. The center has been a really wonderful partner with USC Libraries for many years, and today supporting the filming of our panel discussion. My colleague Sue Loshine, Head of Special Collections here at USC Libraries, and Susie Marshat, the Southern California Studies Specialist, deserve special mention as they played leading roles in bringing the Immaculate Heart Community Collection to USC and the libraries and curating the Women of Integrity exhibition that you can view in the ground floor of Doheny Library. Our programs and events team also played a key role in making the event and the exhibition come together so beautifully today. I'm not seeing them, but thanks them too. Southern California Studies is one of the signature strengths of the USC Libraries. Today we have a perfect opportunity to look at how blending the learning of intertwining the threads of the region's past as well as the present come together in these discussions. I look forward to learning more today as we hear the discussions, and I hope to see many of you at the reception later this afternoon. So please join me in welcoming Susie Marshat to continue the program.
So hello everyone, and welcome, and thank you, Maria. As Maria mentioned, my name is Susie Marshat, and I am the Southern California Studies Specialist in Special Collections here at USC Libraries. And I'm delighted to have an opportunity to say a few words before we begin the event this afternoon. Women of Integrity celebrating 175 years of Immaculate Heart Community is an event, a celebration that is very near and dear to my heart. Nearly 6 years ago, in fall 2017, just after I started working at USC, I and my colleague Sue Loshine, who is head of Special Collections, received an invitation from USC Center for Religion and Civic Culture to visit their offices and meet members of the Immaculate Heart Community to discuss the possibility of bringing their archive, their historical records, to USC. It was a wonderful and engaging conversation, and Sue and I can speak on her behalf, we were both very excited about this possibility. So fast forward to 2023. And we are here now stewarding the community's archive, and we are enormously grateful and honored to be the caretakers of this valuable material that documents the remarkable history of this community that it has had such an impact and continues to have an impact here in Southern California and beyond. The exhibition downstairs, which I hope you will all stick around and have a chance to see this afternoon, features selections from the archive and really conveys the richness of materials in the collection. And what this archive has to offer researchers, students, faculty who can come to special collections to view and study the documents and hear the oral histories online that are accessible through the USC Digital Library. There is a wealth of information in this collection, not only about the community's history, but about women in religion, feminist spirituality, and a host of other topics. So in addition to the exhibition downstairs, we also wanted to celebrate the opening of the archive and the community's 175th anniversary with an event, a gathering that brings together members of the Immaculate Heart Community, the USC campus community, and others in a conversation about Immaculate Heart, its past, present, and future. And we've brought together a wonderful panel to lead us through this discussion. I'm so looking forward to this conversation, which I imagine will touch on many themes that are addressed in the exhibition downstairs, and also provide us with insights into other aspects of the community's work and the lives and impact of the Immaculate Heart Sisters and community members. Before we begin the panel discussion, I just wanted to add my own words of appreciation and gratitude to those who partnered with all of us here at USC Libraries to make this afternoon's events happen. I'm especially grateful to the group of Immaculate Heart Community members, leaders, who collaborated so graciously with Special Collections and our Programs and Events team. Enormous thanks to Nan Cano, to Sherry Purcell, Pam Hope, and Christine Monroe. Also, I'd like to thank staff at the Corita Arts Center, Nellie Scott and Olivia Shaw, who I think are here today. Finally, last but not least, thanks to colleagues at the USC Center for Religion and Civic Culture, Megan Suisse and Napa Kwok, who not only facilitated and hosted the first meeting between members of the Immaculate Heart Community and USC Libraries 6 years ago, some 6 years ago, which really started this wonderful journey that brought the community's archive to USC. But they also generously co-sponsored today's events by sponsoring the filming of this panel discussion. And a recording will be available on the USC Library's YouTube channel. I'd also like to quickly say that immediately following this panel discussion, my colleague Tyson and myself, and perhaps Sue as well, will lead everyone downstairs to the reception. It's 2 floors down, where you can look at the exhibition and also enjoy refreshments at the reception. So now I'm very pleased to give the floor to Sherry Purcell, the current president of the Immaculate Heart Community, who is serving as moderator of the panel discussion and will introduce the panel. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Susie. I have to say personally to you how wonderful you were, incremental, important to us in terms of transferring. I think we talked about this earlier. We packed up 62 boxes, packing boxes, with boxes in those boxes. And what did you tell me? We're up to 123 boxes of materials were transferred to USC last fall. And your patience and your guidance through all of that was just wonderful. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And thank you to everybody else at USC tonight who's contributed to this event. We're just thrilled that this is happening. As Susie said, this is our 175th 5th year since the original community was founded in Spain. So I can't think of a more fitting event to have happening this year than what we're doing tonight. In addition to the people that were already thanked, I want to acknowledge a couple more people in our community. They are not here tonight, but one person in particular, Anna Maria, was our archivist for many years. And she cataloged things, she preserved things, she had lists of things which ultimately went to Richard Hauser, who put it all in the database for us. So Anna Maria's contribution to this is just fundamental to our ability to even have an archive that's presentable. Rosalina Baldonado, Carol Schulke, and Maria Barr helped sort and manage what would be sent. And again, Nan Cano, your blood, sweat, and tears got us here, so thank you so much. So I'm really thrilled that and I want to just acknowledge that those 123 boxes of materials, we recognized a couple of years ago that there was no way we could keep holding them and preserving them in any way that was appropriate. So we're so grateful to USC and to the library system for taking them on, making them available to anybody who wants to look at them online or here in the library. So thank you for helping us. So I want to introduce our panel, our distinguished panel. So at the end of the table, we have Dr. Sheila Briggs. She is an associate professor of religion and gender studies here at USC. She was one of the visiting faculty who offered courses in the master's program for feminist spirituality at the Immaculate Heart College. She served on the board of the Immaculate Heart College Center here in Los Angeles. She served on the board of reproductive rights organization, Catholics for Choice, and she edited with Mary Fulkerson the Oxford Handbook of Feminist Theology. So we're very grateful to have Dr. Briggs with us tonight. Sorry. Next to her is Dr. Lenore Dowling. She's a member of the Immaculate Heart Community. She's a native Angelino, but born to immigrant Filipino parents. She was educated by the Immaculate Heart Sisters. She entered the Order of the Sisters of the Immaculate Heart of Mary in 1950, so she's one of the original canonicals. Her first teaching mission was at Our Lady Queen of Angels High School from 1952 to 57. She taught in IHM high schools, 9 years at the Immaculate Heart College. She taught at the Immaculate Heart College 19 years in English and the art department, and she also taught with Corita Kent. After IHC closed in 1980, she taught literature and composition courses at Rio Hondo Community College for 29 years. She retired from teaching in 2017. Lenore holds a Master's of Arts in English from Immaculate Heart College, an MFA from Columbia University, and a PhD in Communications and Cinema from here at USC. So let's welcome Dr. We also have Dr. Ray Mattis with us. He is also a member of the Immaculate Heart Community, and he currently serves as chair of the Board of Trustees. He is a pastoral theologian, professional gerontologist, and licensed psychotherapist. Ray holds a doctorate in counseling and spiritual care from Wesley Theological Seminary, a master's degree in pastoral theology from LMU, a master's degree in gerontology and public administration from the University of Southern California, and a certificate in Franciscan Studies from the University of St. Francis. So welcome, Ray. And And I'm Sherry Purcell. I've been a member of the community since 2015. And yes, we are accepting new members annually. I'm presently have the honor of being the president and the PEO of the Immaculate Heart Community. And I'm the only one up here that didn't graduate from USC, so I hope you'll let me stay. I have my master's and PhD from the University of Connecticut. So let me talk to you about what we planned for you tonight is a conversation. So when we met last week or so to kind of plan what we were going to do tonight, a general conversation will be about the legacy and impact of the Immaculate Heart Community. And we're going to address that from 3 different perspectives: historical, theological, and cultural, and the feminist perspective. And if tonight's conversation is anything like our planning period, you're in for a really delightful conversation, because when we got together, they were just sparking each other on remembering things, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun. So we'll have this conversation for about a half an hour, and then we'll break for a Q&A, and then we'll go to the reception. So we're going to start the conversation with Ray, who will give us the historical perspective.
Good evening, everyone. As Sherry mentioned,
I don't think so.
good evening, everyone. As Sherry mentioned, this year marks the 175th anniversary of the establishment of what we refer to now as the Immaculate Heart Community. The community originated in a tiny village in Catalonia called Olot, near the Pyrenees Mountains. And it was established by a diocesan priest who had been born and raised in that community, gone off to seminary, and had quite a distinguished academic career. On his graduation with dual degrees in civil and canon law, he was invited to be a professor at the University of Barcelona, to which he declined, because he said he wanted to be a simple parish priest. But he had a knack for engaging in conversation with individuals with different viewpoints and bringing them together. And at the time, there was a lot of socio-political turmoil that was happening in Spain, and so he was assigned to be pastor of his own family's parish in Olot. Parish where the previous pastor had literally been run out of town. And so his name, Joaquin Masmija, began his ministry there and realized that more and more young women and children were coming into the village. There had been civil war, civil unrest. A lot of rural communities were decimated. And so there was mass migration to population centers, of which Olot was one. And Olot had, because of its geographic location, built around or close to 2 rivers, a lot of textile mills began to pop up. It was the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. And so the women and the children were being swept up into working in the textile mills. And there was very little opportunity for education. As a matter of fact, at the time, the illiteracy rate among women was 82%. Men, it was 32%. And so he recognized that there was a need, but also there was a lot of conflict and tension between the institutional Roman Catholic Church, the government, and revolution, the era of revolution, and more democratic freedom. And there was also the reality that at the time, there was no active order of women religious in Catalonia. The only way a woman could serve in the Roman Catholic Church at the time was to become a cloistered nun. And he realized that that wasn't going to solve the problem, the issues that he witnessed. And so after much discernment, much conversation, and much support from a widow by the name of Eudalda Pascual, he conceived the idea of bringing together a group of young women who would go out and educate other women, and to do it outside of the cloister, so that they were free to respond to whatever needs they saw at the time. And that one of the biggest needs of that time was that of education. And so on July 1st, 1848, 7 young women who volunteered to join in this endeavor made their commitment. And that's how the story began. Now, as the years went on, in order to gain legitimacy, more trappings of the institution were imposed on the community. But the community had a reputation for education. And so the visiting bishop of the Diocese of Monterey, Los Angeles, Thaddeus Amat, had heard about them. He himself from Catalonia and visiting. And so when he went and met with Joaquin, he invited Joaquin to send 5 sisters to California to open the first parochial school in Los Angeles. Joaquin's response was, "I will send 10. Thaddeus said, "I only want 5, and I want the best educators." Joaquin said, "I will send 10, and I will send the best educators, on one condition. You cannot break them up. They must be community for one another." And so, arrangements were made. Bishop Amat sent his secretary, Father Mora, to Spain to accompany the sisters. They arrived in Liverpool, England, only to discover that the ship that they had passage on had sailed the day before because of inclement weather. And actually, had they made that ship, there probably would not be Immaculate Heart Community today, because that ship, along with all of its passengers, was lost at sea. And so, they got on the next ship, set sail, arrived in New York, made their way across to California, and they arrived to meet Bishop Amat, who discovers that they do not speak English fluently. And so how could these sisters open a school in Los Angeles where the population was exploding? And so he also has a problem on his hands. He has a difficulty with another religious community who leaves him with an orphanage filled with children. And so in the response to that, he sends the sisters to a predominantly Spanish-speaking area, Gilroy, and he sends 5 there and 5 to San Juan Bautista to staff the orphanage. The superior of the sisters protests and says, "Your Excellency, we were told we were to stay together." He said, "I'm the bishop, and you will do as I instruct you." So thus begins a challenge of the church. It is from these 2 areas, these humble beginnings, gradually making their way down the coast, San Luis Obispo, San Bernardino, that they finally arrive in Los Angeles in 1886 to open the first parochial school here in Los Angeles, which is St. Viviana's Cathedral. So that's our origins and how we came to California. And through all of those years of education, expanse, new members joining, a number of women of Irish heritage joining that soon outnumbered those of Spanish heritage. And a lot of tension was created, because a lot was happening in Spain at the time. The founder had passed away in 1886, who was the link between the California community and the Spanish community. And so there was tension. How to live this expression of religious life in this place, California, that was different from the religious life being lived in Spain. And so after much going back and forth, an apostolic visitation, as the official term is called, in the early 1920s, the community voted to split from Spain to become its own community. With the support of the Bishop of Los Angeles at the time, who was none too happy about these sisters who were driving around in Model T Fords and fraternizing with the laity. He felt that that was not an appropriate thing. And so he had asked for Spain to send someone with authority and someone who spoke English to reel these sisters in. And so the sister that came loved California. She didn't necessarily love the Californians, but worked with the community and began to establish more schools and take on more ministries. And it was decided then after that the community would split from Spain, which they eventually did. The bishop was pleased about that because he had felt that they could become a diocesan community under his authority. And when the papers of separation came from Rome, Rome established the community not as a diocesan community, but as a pontifical community, responsible directly to the Pope, to which the good bishop was not too happy. So those were our origins and how we came to California, and the years that went from 1924 up until the 1960s, and the expansion that took place.
Thank you, Ray. So next we'll go to Dr. Briggs, who will talk about theological and cultural impacts.
So I arrived in Southern California in August of 1983 to begin teaching here at USC. A few days after I arrived, I got a phone call from Pat Reef. Pat Reef introduced herself. She was a member of the Immaculate Heart Mary community. Had I heard of it? Yes, I had. I knew of their struggle with the church. And she told me they were thinking of starting a program, a master's program in feminist spirituality. And they were going to hold a panel at a local church in a few weeks to see whether there was interest in such a program and would I participate. So I said, yes, I will be happy. And so I got to meet Pat Reef and I did the panel. And the following year, the program began. And I was one of the visiting faculty who taught fairly regularly, every 1 or 2 years in the program. But what was very important about the program was that it attracted, people were very happy to teach in it, who were the leading scholars in feminist theology. So Rosemary Rufo was one of the people involved. She had been earlier for a brief time on the faculty at the Immaculate Heart College. Elizabeth Schuster-Forenza was another, Beverly Harrison, Carter Haywood, the names could go on. And the MA in Feminist Spirituality program was, during the time of its existence, a really important part in the history of feminist theology. and its impact is still felt today. Some of its students went on for further work in feminist theology. Now, I did not meet Anita Caspi immediately when I came to California. However, I did hear of her. My students in my first classes at USC in 1984 were very keen on using inclusive language. Now, this may be a surprise to folks because we live in a world of, people talk about preferred pronouns. But I can tell you in the 1980s there was only one preferred pronoun, and that was he. And Anita had introduced the students to the idea of using and asking for inclusive language to be used in the classroom. The students had eagerly embraced it. My colleagues, who at that time were all white and Heckin, less so. And they referred to Anita as the nun. Sounds a little like the horror movie. So I did eventually get to know Anita. I met her first at a Firestone dinner, since she came to those events, and she was accompanied by Sister Susan Maloney, who had, at that time, this would be 1985-86, recently joined our doctoral program. Now, Dr. Maloney is a Holy Names of Jesus and Mary nun, and she was not only a close friend to Anita Caspi, she also assisted Anita in the writing of her book, Witness to Integrity. And of course you can see the wordplay between this exhibition we're going to be looking and Anita's volume. Now this writing is the autobiographical account of how the Immaculate Heart of Mary sisters evolved in the mid-20th century in ways that would eventually bring them into conflict with the local archbishop, Cardinal McIntyre, and then how the new Immaculate Heart of Mary community, the IHN community, emerged and thrived in the wake of that crisis. Now, if you want to know more about this history, Dr. Maloney has herself written extensively on Anita Caspi and the history of the Immaculate Heart community. You can find that in several articles and book chapters. Now, what I'm going to do myself today is talk about two things which have already been mentioned here. The importance of the IHMs, both the sisters and the later community, as part of the history of Southern California. To understand Southern California, you need to understand the IHMs, because they in many ways are exemplary of everything that people came to California for, and also for people like Cardinal McIntyre, everything that people hated about California. So the Immaculate Heart sisters in the 1960s were often called the Hollywood nuns. In part, this was a geographical statement about where the community was located, but it was also a social and cultural comment on how the Immaculate Heart sisters had embraced California with its dynamic growth and unruly spirit of innovation. I did not know Carita. Obviously, she had left the community and, in fact, the Los Angeles area long before I arrived here. But I came to understand even more her national significance when, in 2012, I visited an exhibition at the National Museum of Women in the Arts in Washington. And I'd gone there to see their exhibition, Radical Love, Sister Mary Carita. So I think it's very telling that the premier feminist art institution in the country, had her exhibition devoted to Carita. And what they focused on was the period in the 60s when she was at Immaculate Heart College and was teaching art there. It presented the art that Carita had created in the 60s, and often this was in connection with the celebration of the Mary Days. Now, I don't know if there is any video of this in the archive, but I've seen one of the video recordings of the Mary Days, and it is amazing. This is the counterculture of the 60s. It's got creativity, political engagement, questioning of conventions, aesthetic and otherwise. Carita is now seen as a major figure in the emergence of pop art. Now, it's not just all Andy Warhol. There was a further exhibition at the Fogg Art Museum in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and with it an accompanying publication. And she's also portrayed as she's a major figure in the new book by the distinguished art historian Thomas Crowe, and it's called The Artist in the Counterculture. As well as being part of the history of Southern California, the Immaculate Heart Sisters reflected the change that happened in post-World War II American Catholicism. And here the sort of histories of Catholicism in America and Southern California run together. During this period, Catholics, like everyone else, were migrating to California. What they left behind in the cities of the East and Midwest, Philadelphia, Chicago, were the ethnic parishes which were built around immigrant communities. So you'd have a Polish Catholic church and an Italian Catholic church and an Irish Catholic church, and they were, they were all on the same block, but they had different congregations. And so what you had was the emergence of the American parish. Now, not all of this is entirely progressive. Admittedly, in the Southern California suburbs, these new parishes were often exclusively white. But that's not the whole story. That many of the people, Catholics who came to Southern California, wanted to create something different. They saw California as a place where they could actually work for social justice. And I'm going to give you one example from those who were drawn into the work for social justice by the Immaculate Heart Sisters of the period, and also drawn into the struggle for change in the church, because this is the 60s, it's the era of Vatican II. So one of my right friends had a father who was a businessman in Chicago, where he already fought against redlining and housing segregation. He moved to Los Angeles, and as any wise father would do, he sent his daughters to the Immaculate Heart High School, and himself was caught up in their activities in the fervor for change in society and in the church, which permeated all of the institutions which were associated with the Immaculate Heart Sisters. The Immaculate Heart Sisters was a magnet for such Catholics. My friend tells the story of her father helping to smuggle in the controversial theologian Hans Kuhn for a talk at the high school, which Cardinal McIntyre did not want to take place. This anecdote illustrates how the Immaculate Heart Sisters was at the center of the ferment in the 60s, which sought radical change both in the society and the church. And this is the legacy that the Immaculate and the IHM community has carried on further. We have the archives now through the 1970s, but I'm sure that later story will come to USC as well.
Thank you, Sheila. Now we're turning it over to Lenore, who will give us the feminist perspective.
Well, there are several threads from women becoming community, insisting that they stay as community. Education, responding to the call to meet the needs of the day, justice, education, that's our legacy. And from the beginning through the middle, from the 70s, we've been following that legacy in the spirit of our founders, who were the models of integrity and justice, independence, conscience, resistance. So it wasn't new historically in the 70s that we took a stand and said, we will be our own authority. We will not be dictated to by men. And Pat Reef was very instrumental in teaching us, all of our elders, Anita, Helen Kelly, Corita, were models of justice and teaching and equity and inclusion. So those of us who joined the community followed in their footsteps, and we were educators until, as the film Rebel Hearts shows, we were told to vacate our schools in 1968. And most of the nuns who taught in parochial schools had to leave the schools. We were the founding community in Los Angeles for most of the parochial schools. And Carter McIntyre kept building schools, and we were establishing our own teachers to fill those roles in the schools. So we were known as educators. All of us were educated at Immaculate Heart College. And as the film shows, because of Corita and our faculty and our leaders, like Helen Kelly and Anita, we all inherited the spirit of the community that came from our founders. So to say that we did something new, it's more a continuity from our beginning to value community, to work for justice, to meet the needs of the day. And from a feminist perspective, and Pat Reed really taught us use inclusive language and patriarchy. And so they were our teachers for those of us who were naive and not as well schooled and educated. So I think we owe a lot to Pat Reed for educating us, but that has continued. So the community, because of that spirit of independence, following our own authority and not being dictated to by others, continues. And when we were expelled from the schools and then made the decision after Vatican Council, 62 to 65, to say we will resist orders from the local bishop to continue being teachers, because not everybody wanted to be teachers, but wanted to be an Immaculate Heart. We won't have to say prayers at the same time. Continue to be in education and to obey the bishop. And those are disciplinary guidelines. And the cardinal gave us the ultimatum, and when we voted in '69 to say we need to be faithful to what we believe as a community, as justice, as being our own authority, and not being dictated to by the patriarchy, 315 of us got dispensation from our vows, and 65 decided to be California nuns under the authority of the bishop. So we were no longer under the authority of the bishop, but those who wanted to go into science, nursing, law, followed their call service and to work for justice in arenas other than education. Some of us taught our whole lives, and many teachers who were in pro-growth schools went on to teach in adult education. So today, we are enriched by members, younger than I am, who are coming for spiritual development in a community, who want to grow with us, who want to work for justice, who want to be part of a community that believes our call is to serve God in the world and resist unjust authority that's imposed on us. So we follow from our roots and we continue following God's call to be of service in the world. Thank you.
Thank you, all three of you. So we have a little time, I think, to have questions. So please raise your hand if you have a question for anybody up here.
Sheila, who was the theologian that was secreted in?
Hans Kuhn, have you heard?
Hans Kuhn, yes.
Hans Kuhn, yes.
Who was the person that smuggled it in?
Paul Seliger. Oh, yes. So this was the father of my friend. So you get somebody. There were many ordinary Catholics who, even before this community, this is one of the things I think that Ray got to talk about. That the community was notorious. Sisters were notorious for fraternizing with the laity. So they actually worked with, and this was the 60s, and they were already in the 60s, they were the avant-garde of breaking down these boundaries between laity and sisters, who were actually, sisters are lay people. They're not actually, but they were still expected to have this boundary between them and the quotes the ordinary laity.
And Tom Hayden also was at that time.
Well, no, this was a whole.
He
Yeah, this is the 60s. Everybody, yeah.
was a professor at, visiting professor at the college.
So there's a question over here. Yes.
I'm familiar with what happened in the late 60s and early 70s. Is there any coordination or communication with the Catholic Church today in Immaculate Heart Community?
Well, many of us are still Catholics, and we're going to ask them. I'm not sure about confession. So our authority is our own. Our authority is not from the Catholic Church. And Anita Casbury says in the film very directly, answering your question, no, we did not leave the Catholic Church. So you must see the film if you haven't seen it. It'll be shown at the Regal Theater October 20th.
October 20th.
And it's on Max and Discovery Plus on the computer. You can sign in, watch it. But it verifies what we have all said about our roots, our spirit, our self-determination to be faithful to God's calling.
We are still Rebel Hearts today. We have among us some Roman Catholic women priests. We have one over here, Rosa Mariquez. I think it's fair to say that many still work within the Catholic Church structure to advocate for reform, but we are an ecumenical community. I was raised in the Methodist Church. The community now is men, women, gay, straight. We live all over the continental United States. We have 2 members in Canada, and we're currently bringing in a new member from England. So we're expanding internationally too. So we're alive and well. Check out our website when you can. Other questions? Rosa's over here.
I wanted to add to the discussion as to the impact of the Immaculate Heart Community on Los Angeles and California, and bringing to the top the students that were affected by 1968 and 1970. I went to St. Vivianus, and I also went to Queen of Angels High School. And when the sisters left, what we understood also was that part of what was told to the cardinal was we are not going to stay in school where those books are falling apart in their hands, which was happening in some of our schools. The only new book that I would get was the catechism. And also that the sisters had to be able to get their education without burning out and be capable to be good teachers. And the first school that was closed after the Archdiocese promised that no school would be closed, the first school that was closed was Queen of Angels High School. And now, more than 50 years after that school was closed, after my school was closed, I realized you're talking about patriarchy and sexism in the Catholic Church. What would be the best school to close down? It would be one that was for all girls, that had all ethnic groups, all races in a community, because it was a beautiful community, who were being educated to go to college, to go to university, and who came from middle income and low income communities. Very smart.
I see a hand over here.
I can add to that is not so distant history, as I was a faculty member of Alverno Heights Academy that was shut down last year, along with another all-girls school in the Archdiocese, a college preparatory school that empowered young women for 63 years. I'm sorry, I'm getting emotional. Not so distant. And all because a priest in our diocese did not like the fact that we opened up a lower school that competed with his school and put us on the not so good list. And so just thank you, because I'm now at Marymount, another all-girls empowering school. But, it lives on, and it's something that is a true testimony. That all of my freshmen just watched Rebel Hearts, 100 young women, and just got so inspired and felt so empowered. I taught feminist theology at Alverno, taught it as a liberation theology, because that's what it is at this point. And I think just everything that you all did, and Sister Susan with our community, and Ray, who was a board member of our school, it speaks volumes, and it's still alive and well, like you said, so.
Thank you. We haven't heard that part of the story.
And then I say, I feel for you. We should talk. I feel for that. It's a spiritual violence that was done, and I feel for you. And by the way, the last message to Queen of Angels and to the community, which I think we don't realize, was this is what happens to intelligent women. The only thing left of our school is a parking lot in Chinatown.
Yes.
Perhaps just to enter into the conversation, the fact that Immaculate Heart High School is going strong.
Immaculate Heart High School is going strong, absolutely.
And I think one of our principals is here.
Is that right? I don't.
Three of us back here.
Okay. Bravo.
I'm just curious in terms of, and thank you so much for this history. In a sense, it seems to me that based on what I've heard, you've interrogated sort of the denominational line in some very dramatic ways, both by what the organization now is composed of, as Cher, you just mentioned, and sort of your rebel heart nature. I'm curious whether the community is specifically interested in ecumenism, whether there's, is that as sort of a practice or an interest, something that the community kind of surfaces and features in its work or in its thinking or in its prayer.
We are ecumenical, but I can also say that ecumenical being Christian, different denominations. But it's very true that we draw from practices of other faith traditions in in terms of how we worship together, the kinds of inspirational readings we have, and so forth. I don't know if that answers your question or not. And so, many of us respect, other religious practices and try to incorporate that into what we do. Nan, did you have a
There are several members within the community who are Episcopal priests, Baptist preachers, and they celebrate Eucharist with us, and we worship together as one. So it's not just words on paper. They're alive and well and so welcome.
What's kind of interesting is we have several retired clergy who come to us. And when I ask them what's that all about, it's like, I think it's kind of like a respite for them from, they don't really have to be on call or, need to be ready to lead something. They're just a member of the community and they contribute as they want. So we're really a mixed bag of people with a lot of different perspectives on our religion. Maybe one of you would like to speak to that.
Well, as was shared, we have individuals who come to community to be of service to the world, but to be of that service in the context of community and to develop their spirituality as they feel called to do that. We claim as our charism, Greek word, it basically means the particular gift given to us as a group. We claim that it's to be hearts untarnished by fear, broken open through mystery. And I think that has been a reflection of our history and continues to be our call, to be hearts that are untarnished by fear and broken open through mystery, whatever that mystery is, and to allow ourselves to have that mystery impact us in ways that we respond in service, and to deepen our individual and collective spiritualities. So obviously as an ecumenical Christian community, but an expression of that. How is that expressed in our coming together? Our core document, which we refer to as the Spirit document, which is in essence the constitution of the community, says that we don't live in community, but we live as community and live in the world.
So I think maybe on that note, we'll wrap it up and go to the reception, and Susie and Sue and, Tyson will lead us. So thank you everybody for coming